Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our new episode of the UME UP Startup Experience program. This is a project we launched in partnership with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, the Ukrainian Startup Foundation, and R&D Center WINSTARS.AI. The aim of this project is to help startups learn how to build their businesses effectively and successfully. And we are joined by well-known Ukrainian entrepreneurs who are here to share their insights. And today our guest is CEO of FRENDT, Bohdan Kruhlyk.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here.
We are glad to have you with us today, and we are hoping for a great and productive conversation.
There is no other way. They say if it's tough at the start, it gets easier as you go.
Exactly. I hope that's how it goes. Let me briefly explain how today's session will work. The interview will be split into three parts. The first part includes questions we prepared in advance for our speaker. During this time, our startup audience can think about what they'd like to ask, whatever it's about your company work or entrepreneurship in general. So here is the first question of this section. Tell us how the idea for your business came about and where you started.
I've been the company's director for 3 years now. Before that, I joined the company as a regular manager back in 2019, and in 2022, during the war, I became the director. The owner and founder of the company is Vitaly Shubaransky. The business was originally founded in 2013. Our founder had worked for various companies that distributed agricultural machinery, your typical agro-businesses, selling equipment, but he always had a drive for innovation, change, and transformation. One of the key decisions I think he successfully made was to create a company called FRENDT. In the beginning, it was a truly family-run business. It was him, his brother, his mom, and dad. All of them set out to try and build something innovative, even though nobody really thought in those terms back then. That's the kind of origin story it was. They simply started selling equipment, what we call tractor navigators, to help farmers know exactly where they are in the field. Back in 2013, it really was an innovation. It was something unreal at the time. And then the company began to grow. Today, FRENDT has a team of 80 specialists in the field of precision agriculture, agri-tech technologies, and we also have our own R&D center. We are active in many different areas, more than 85 in fact. Our client base includes around 8,000 customers across Ukraine, whom we support and work with. Broadly speaking, one of our key areas is automation and robotization of field business processes. And we handle everything here, from hardware equipment to implementation. Then there's our consulting division, focused on precision agriculture and digitalization of agribusiness. That includes software solutions, trainings, and full integration of agricultural technologies and innovations into agribusiness. We also have our own manufacturing. There are two separate factories in different directions. One produces cables and harnesses for agricultural machinery. The other is focused on renewable energy. We have a plant that produces full briquettes made from wood, and the fourth area is our R&D center, which also works with startups. One of the startups that helps us realize our company's mission, which we call the Agriculture Digital Revolution, is a project we really believe in. This startup is called FlyG Data, and it received a nomination and funding from the EBRD's Climate Innovation Voucher Program. Right now, we are actively developing this product, which helps digitalize all field-related processes and collect agricultural data. That's the short version.
Awesome. That's a really cool story. What's also interesting is that until now, most of our speakers have been the actual founders of their companies. So it's especially fascinating that you joined the company later, and despite starting out as manager, you grew into the CEO role. Tell us how it happened, what was your initial role, and how did you manage to grow into the position of CEO?
I actually have a pretty interesting story. I come from a family of farmers. My parents are in agriculture too, so I've been connected to the real agricultural sector since childhood. From the age of 12, I was already trying things on my own, taking part in growing crops and in different production processes. But as is often the case in farming families, the kids usually end up becoming lawyers, diplomats, or economists. In other words, they don't go into agriculture. And I was no exception. I didn't go into the agri sector directly either. I pursued a legal education. I have three law degrees: a bachelor's, a master's, and a specialist degree. And by the way, my specialist degree is in innovation management. I graduated from university, but I actually started working there in my second year. We were involved in digitalizing the entire institution, digitizing processes, creating digital profiles for students, applicants, and even professors. We also implemented an access control system at the academy. Our team started small, just 5 people back in 2014, but by the time I left, we had grown 53, and we had fully transformed the university's operations into a digital format. After that, as is often the case, I had the desire to conquer the capital, so I moved to Kiev and tried myself in the public sector. I worked at the State Property Fund and also at the State Judicial Administration, specifically in the Judicial Expertise Center. I was somewhat involved there. But alongside my legal education, I always had a passion for innovation and a deep interest in that space. In 2019, a really interesting community was formed: Kyiv Legal Hackers. So, some of the digital products that came out of that community are now used across the country. For example, Open Data Board and also Olha Chornogorenko, who is now leading digitalization in the military. Back in 2019, we saw her creating the digital service Yamolatko, if you are familiar with it. There is also the Ukrainian legal tech startup Xdraft, which raised 1.2 million from United States Investment Fund. I know Yuri Zaremba as well, and we also followed PatentBot, another Ukrainian startup. At that time, it wasn't even clear how classical law could be combined with innovation or digital transformation. I also took part in acceleration program from 1991 Open Data Incubator. It was a fantastic experience. We had a great project manager and administrator, Zhenya Klopa, who really motivated us and taught us about innovation. We spent 2 months in acceleration program hosted by Hill Innovation Institute for Legal Rights. It was in 2019 when I met Valeria Ionan, the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation. She taught us marketing and shared insights on how to build startups. A lot of the people who are now leading Ukraine's digital transformation were there, sharing their knowledge. That's when something clicked for me. I realized I wanted to be in innovation. I already had a strong understanding of agriculture, and I started looking for something that could combine both innovation and ag-tech, where I could actually be useful. And so on May 15, 2019, I joined FRENDT as a regular sales manager. In fact, my job title in the employment record book was listed as communications manager. Not even sales manager, communications manager. After just 3 months, I became a regional director, and after 6 months, I was promoted to commercial director. I completely rebuilt and restructured the system. What helped me most in building the system were the skills I gained from working in the public sector, understanding vertical and horizontal structures. Delegation, subordination, execution, obligations, procedures, phrases like in accordance with, version 2, all those legal and procedural concepts were useful, and we experienced rapid growth. For example, comparing 2019 to 2020, we doubled our results, and from 2020 to 2021, we tripled them. When I joined the company, there were about 38 people. Today, we are at 80. By the end of 2022, we had returned to our 2020 performance levels. Our main task then was simply to stop the decline. Now we are working on restoring our 2021 performance.
You're getting back on the track, so to speak.
Yes, despite the challenging situation in the agricultural sector and in the country overall, regarding digitalization of agriculture and the broader agricultural transformation, including exports and revenue in what is still Ukraine's number one industry. Right now, we don't see a clear national digital strategy for the agri sector. There is no unified vision of how we will integrate into the European Union or transition from a developing country into a first world country. Honestly, the only institution I see that's forming a real government relations strategy and long term vision through to 2030 is the Ministry of Digital Transformation. At least there is something structured and well thought out. Everything else still needs a lot of improvement.
Well, there's no moving forward without that.
Today, as a company and myself as a CEO, our philosophy is quite simple: make complex things simple and avoid anything untrue. The goal is always to pursue truth and data accuracy so that what we do brings real value to society, to our clients, and to the environment. Our management foundation is also simple. We are built on holacracy and lean manufacturing principles. That's our core. When it comes to people management, we follow the HR zero trend. We've fully restructured our team, and today there are no bosses or old school directors with inflated titles. Our entire top management serves as the mentors to employees. Their role is to help team members overcome barriers. These barriers are always of two types. They are either internal in your mind or external, real world obstacles. A person may lack the knowledge of the competences to overcome them. And in fact, we've become evangelists of digital agriculture and agri-tech. And only this year, on our 11th anniversary, we've come to fully realize it. We are in essence an agri-tech company. We help transform and digitalize agribusiness. This realization was also supported by the association we are both members of. We are part of the agri-tech committee, where we are now actively helping to finally build a national strategy for agri-tech technologies in Ukraine. And we do have something to be proud of. Even though it's not widely known or felt, Ukraine is in the top 5 countries worldwide in terms of the speed of agriculture digitalization. What's even more impressive is that we are almost entirely unregulated. in terms of data transfer and digital processes. There are simply no strict rules yet, and that's actually a huge advantage. We are free when it comes to regulation in ag-tech. And under these extremely difficult conditions, something of a Ukrainian miracle has happened. Farmers themselves are seeing the value of innovation. Even with limited funds, even when there is no stable pricing or market for their products, they understand that innovation is the only way to remain efficient, productive, and to keep their business alive. And we found the right match. We figured out how to explain to them how innovation can truly help. That's why we are seeing the results we have today.
That such a great story. It's really cool that you had experience in the digital field from the beginning. It makes perfect sense why you are now leading this team because you already had the inspiration to modernize this sector. To make it simpler and more accessible for everyone. That's fantastic. And I'll say that this is probably based on the experience of many Ukrainians. Most people still associate agriculture with something outdated. You hear agriculture and you picture a tractor in field, and yes, it's still a bit of that. But I also know a lot of startups that working in the space, trying to innovate piece by piece, whether it's creating smarter machinery or using precision farming technologies to figure out exactly where and what to plant. The goal is to optimize the entire process. Tell us, what do you specialize in the most and how does it all works? Or maybe a bit of everything?
Well, for example, farmers today are like top tier IT specialists. One single piece of equipment they use can be as expensive as a luxury car, a Rolls Royce, for instance. Out in the field, you'll see machinery that's fully loaded with high end tech. A tractor and a seeder combo can cost around $700,000 to $800,000, and that's just one setup working in the field. I call it a paradox of technology. We are buying super expensive machinery equipped with top quality sensors, advanced digital systems, and all kinds of features, and yet people often don't use them. And there is an even bigger paradox. The person operating that equipment may only have a high school education, that's it. Meanwhile, in large corporations, IT professionals with all relevant knowledge and skills earn 1,500 to $2,000 a month. But now even machinery operators, or more accurately pilots, because they don't actually drive anymore, earn the same. Most of the manual work is done by technologies like autopilot systems. So the pilot just sits there. His main task is to monitor the process and make sure the work is being done accurately. His attention isn't on the steering wheel, but on the quality of the operation. We realized there was a huge gap in understanding. People simply didn't know how all this is supposed to work. That's why we created a really cool book. I'll even show it to you in a second. We developed a book that explains what precision agriculture is. It's called a promo book about modern technologies for the agricultural sector. I believe it should be a go to handbook for every agricultural producer to understand what strategy is and how to build an innovative agribusinesses. Everything is clearly laid out in it. We call it the 7 levels of precision agriculture, 7 steps to success. So, what is precision agriculture really focused on? It's about efficiency, productivity, and rationality. That means every single resource and input used in farming must be applied with logic and purpose, not just based on what someone said, what a neighbor recommended, or what was written somewhere online. Decisions shouldn't be made solely on assumptions or hearsay. In my view, decisions must be made based on digital data, on what you can actually see, measure, and analyze.
Mhm.
Precision agriculture makes it possible to visualize every process happening in the field. All these processes are mapped out in what we call a technological map, similar to a technical brief in IT, defining what the end result should be. Every process, like when machinery is moving, can be monitored right from the office or even on a smartphone. We watch, we manage it remotely. And here is where another story begins. You need to understand how to manage all of this.
Так.
It's like how we all use maybe 30% of our iPhone's potential. Just scrolling, playing music, scrolling TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. But what it's really capable of at full power, most people don't even explore. We saw that, and now we are actively developing digital farmers. We have specialized units where we carefully implement and fine tune these technologies. And when farmers start seeing the real effects, they begin integrating them into their operations. At this point, the role becomes more like that of a project manager. You have to deliver the technology, deliver the knowledge, and teach them so it actually works. And here comes the biggest paradox. A company like ours actually cares about what will happen to the agri sector in 3-5 years. We bring in these technologies and we act like evangelists, showing farmers that this is useful, that it works, that it's never harmful, and that it could be the thing that helps them survive right now. But sometimes the response we get is just, this is nonsense,
Yes,
it
yes,
doesn't
there
work.
definitely are people like that, no doubt.
In our research, we classified agribusinesses into intensive, semi intensive, and extensive types. That is,
Ага.
those who adopt innovations and those who don't. Here is another paradox of innovation. The regions of Ukraine that are most risky for investing in agriculture, where weather and conditions make farming extremely challenging, are actually the ones adopting the most innovation. Meanwhile, regions with stable yields and consistent profits, like those in western Ukraine, are much slower to adopt. Out there, farmers often have great harvests and decent income, and they tend to believe innovation is not necessary. But places like Mykolaiv and Odessa regions, where farming conditions are tougher, are actively looking for ways to survive. They are eager to gain knowledge. They come to us, and if we look at our sales, those regions are consistently in top 3 for adopting new technologies. So what do we really do? I always look at it this way. Every agribusiness owner is an investor. They are investing in every single hectare of land, and they need to get money back plus make profit. To invest effectively, you first need to understand what kind of field you are working with, what processes are involved. You need to study that. Then you need to minimize risk and invest rationally. The old worldview used to be there is a field, we plant something, we harvest something, and we are satisfied with an average result. But today, things have changed. Each hectare is its own unit, and not even every investment into it pays back. You need to track the efficiency of every single hectare. Globally, the agriculture industry is already fighting for something even deeper, the economic potential of every individual plant growing within
That's
that hectare.
thinking several steps ahead.
Exactly. And the only way we can do that is through digital tools, digital products that allow us to see, analyze, and make decisions based on real impact. For example, we are the first company in Ukraine to sell sprayers powered by artificial intelligence, and there are already 3 of these sprayers working in Ukrainian fields. One of them has already completed a full production season. Also, we are the first and so far the only company in Ukraine that owns its own weather radar, which collects the most accurate climate and weather data specifically for agricultural procedures. That radar is
That's
located in
great.
Vinnytsia, Why are we doing all this? What's the point? There is always that question, what for? And the answer is simple, to fulfill our company's mission, the agricultural digital revolution. We dream of a future where an agribusiness owner is sitting in an office, looking at screens, watching automated processes happen in the field. Artificial intelligence is suggesting decisions, and the human is simply responsible for executing them, with minimal human resources and with a much deeper, smarter understanding of their agribusiness. The next step is creating a digital twin of the farm so you can model risks, simulate outcome, see what changes to make, estimate transition costs, and evaluate efficiency. And what's the ultimate goal? So that one day when we sell food products, consumers will be able to scan a QR code and see the entire journey of that product from the field to the table. They'll know exactly what happened to it along the way. And in the future, the world will divide very clearly. There will be high quality food and it will be expensive. And there will be a cheap food. Each person will have to make a decision. Do I want to eat quality food, live longer, and be healthier? Or eat low quality food and live shorter?
Yes, exactly. That really feels like a full conclusion to the whole topic. It's been amazing to hear it from you because it's so encouraging to know we have companies in Ukraine that are already thinking this way, already implementing these ideas, and actively working toward it because it really matters. Many companies still think, well, if it works the way it is, why change it? We're always planted wheat and corn. Sure, these are always losses, weather plays a role. Sometimes it affects the harvest, sometimes not. We'll just what we get. But the companies that are adopting innovation, they can already influence those outcomes. They can already improve their results. And the cases we lost the crop or the weather ruined it will become less common because all of these can be predicted through AI, through forecasting. You'll be even able to plan which crops to plant on which part of land, in which quantity, and even estimate how much you will harvest before you plant. And that's amazing.
And after that, insurance markets will follow. Then financing will become easier. A digital agri asset will be easier to sell and it will be worth more. You'll know exactly what your agribusiness is, a cash flow model with a clearly defined minimum and maximum revenues. That's the beauty of having a digital business, and it doesn't matter what field you're in. That's the point. If you have control over it, if you see what's going on, you're in a position to make decisions not based on emotion, like someone forgot something or it might rain so the harvest will be fine. No, you understand that you have control over 70% of your agribusiness because everything involved is material. You plant it, you fertilize it, you manage it. And it is you who has to make the right decisions. How much is enough? I always compare it to people. One person is full after one bowl of borscht. Someone else needs two and is still hungry. If we switch their portions, one person will be overstuffed and the other will be hungry. That's how precise we need to be with agriculture too.
Yes, yes, exactly. I think this is a good point for us to move on to the questions from the startups. Some of them were submitted in advance through our chat. I will start with one of them. How do you deal with the fact that not all farmers are open to new technologies and digitalization? How do you work with that?
Let me tell you how we used to approach it and how we've changed. In the past, we thought the best way was to visit every single farm explain everything in person, and then change would just happen. We invested a lot of money into this, though honestly, not all of those investments paid off. So, what are we doing differently now? We've shifted our focus. We believe that if we can help create a core of 10,000 farmers in Ukraine who truly understand digital technologies and innovation, those people will naturally start changing the entire approach to agribusiness. They'll be competitive, and unfortunately, the weak will not survive. That's just the reality. In one of the management trainings I took, they said something that really stuck with me: strengthen the strong, so that by watching them, the weaker ones also get stronger.
I think that's exactly how it works.
The thing is, someone who's playing a big game, someone who is already running an efficient business, will always be an example. For some people, a negative example, because they are jealous. But for others, it is a positive example, a chance to learn. And the truth is, there is so much to learn from successful people. Even more, most successful people are actually open to helping others. They are willing to mentor, to share knowledge. The problem is, less successful people often think it's unreachable, that those mentors don't have time for them. But many of people I speak to, the truly successful ones, have a spiritual side. They are grounded, consistent, and they want to share their experience to strengthen others. For example, one of my friends has a personal mission: help Ukrainian entrepreneurs grow GDP 10 times more. I told him, that's impossible. And he said, but what if we at least try? And that's the point. We should put our energy into helping those who see the value and who can actually act on it. As for those who don't believe in it, honestly, try to convince them is a waste of time. We used to try. Now our focus is on realizing the potential we've built into our company and what our team believes in. And our approach is now to look for the right people and the right clients, because they become partners, not just customers. We believe in true partnership, a win-win relationship, and our goal is to help our clients become the top tier player in their region.
That's great, simple and great.
And it works. Then we took it a step further. Now we are working on communicating the value and importance of innovation in educational institutions. We've established two research and development centers, one at the Polytechnic University and one at Vinnytsia Agricultural University. These are modern classrooms where young people come in fascinated, seeing how the agri-sector is being transformed. We are now seeing a blend of classic agricultural knowledge and IT expertise, and that kind of synchronization is only going to grow. Experts in one area will start to strengthen and enhance their expertise in other, and this is already happening in Vinnytsia. Our project inspired other companies. Businesses in Vinnytsia started opening their own centers, local branches, even renovating university spaces. Some companies are investing up to $100,000 to create those modern classrooms, equipped with advanced technology and real industry tools. Now, someone might think, oh, they're just doing that for show. But those who think more deeply will realize, wow, businesses are entering academia, integrating with education and helping grow the next generation that will change our country. Because right now, students often go through school thinking they are not responsible for the knowledge they receive. They just go through the motions, but we are helping change the mindset. Our company, for example, I personally took part in defending an academic program, helped faculty write it. It was an agricultural engineering program that they were planning to cancel. We defended it,
That's
showed the
awesome.
results we'd already implemented, and we did it all in just 1 year. Now just imagine if more people and companies like ours with social responsibility embedded in their corporate culture started going even just a little bit more. What kind of country would we have? This is where we say, sorry, it's not just up to the government or the parliament. It's also up to those of us who live and work here. It's about collaboration. And we believe in that. We are extremely proactive in this area. That's also the vision of our founder, and I fully support it. We are participants in every possible association, cluster, network, you name it, in our region. And now we are starting to share this vision even more widely. But the main point is, we've taken responsibility for what happens to this sector, and we are not just taking, we are actively working to make an impact. We are not saying anyone else is bad, we are just getting out there and doing the work. And the most important thing is, just go and do it.
I really like your approach, especially that you're stepped into the education space, because it's so important to understand that young people today often view agriculture related professions as outdated or irrelevant. They hear agriculture and think it sounds boring or old fashioned. But the truth is, it's great that these professions are evolving, and in the near future, they will actually become some of the most in demand and prestigious. It's amazing that the agricultural sector can be digitized. You can use cutting edge tech. It's not longer just some basic farm job. Maybe it's because the whole world is digital now. We are surrounded by the internet and everything electronic, so traditional roles are gradually fading and losing value in the eyes of the next generation. I think at least a bit.
Alexandra, you are absolutely right. This is actually a global challenge, raising the next generation who will feed us, because their values are different now, and there are serious issues when it comes to their perception of agriculture. One of our key goals is to involve young people in digital ag tech to show them that agriculture today is something exciting. It's tablets, screens, AI, it's full of technology and even a bit of magic. It's nothing like people imagine. And we are still shaking off that old Soviet era stereotype, collective farms, barns, basic labor, but modern agribusiness is totally different. Today's successful agribusiness owner drives a premium car. Their team members drive premium cars too. They build housing for their employees, they support them, they provide everything. And when I look at the world, here is what bothers me. In some areas, we are still not quite there, but in many others, we absolutely are. And believe me, there are plenty of reasons why the rest of the world should be looking up to
That's the
us.
key. It's great that Ukraine has so much potential even in this sector. A lot of foreigners say that Ukraine is an amazing country because our people can take any task and turn it into something great. Our engineers are well known, our technical specialists have a great reputation. People say Ukrainians are smart, hardworking, and that's a real value, something we need to preserve. And it doesn't matter whether the industry is modern or more traditional. In the future, everything will evolve anyway. It will transform into a new kind of everyday normal, and the change will happen whether we're ready or not. We imagine the future, but in reality, it's already
The
happening.
future is already here. The only question is who sees it and who
Yes, yes, that's
doesn't.
very true.
It's already around us.
Here is an interesting question. You shared that you have experience restructuring a company and scaling up your team. Tell us, from your perspective, especially for startups, how important is it to build processes correctly from the beginning? And how can it be done in the early stages?
Business processes, that's actually my favorite topic. But Here is the thing: people always ask why business processes aren't fast enough or as efficient as they'd like them to be.
Well, it's hard.
Exactly. It takes a lot of patience. Unfortunately, a startup is not about systems. Startups are about creativity, speed, and flexibility. They are often about improvisation. And what I often see is that many startups operate based on irrational desires, what they hope will happen. But when you come face to face with real barriers in business, many founders haven't truly worked through what they are actually selling. In most startups, I see a lack of product clarity and a lack of clear business model. I've been trained in systems thinking, and I always talk about this triangle: knowledge, responsibility, control. What does it mean? If you lack the knowledge and don't understand how to build something properly, then how can you take control of it? And even more
Exactly,
importantly, how
probably
can
no
you be
way,
held
right?
accountable for it? Right, and it all starts with knowledge. The second level is analysis. Whatever knowledge we gain, we need to analyze it, especially when we hit a wall. So, first, take the initial step, get the knowledge you need to solve the problem. And that knowledge is out there, often for free. I've gone through tons of different courses, platforms, both online and offline events, communication forums, but I'll tell you honestly, the best knowledge is what you gain with your own hands, what I call battle tested knowledge. You go into the field, literally in our case, and you see how things actually work. Because sitting in an office and telling a farmer that this technology is amazing and that by tomorrow you'll be the coolest guy in the village and Elon Musk will come visit you, that doesn't work. What works is understanding the real mindset of the farmer, the challenges they face, and having a valid defined customer profile. We work hard on that, deeply analyze the decision makers in
That's
agribusiness,
so important,
who
yes.
they are, and what they care about, and we stay focused on them. When we were growing the company and making 2x, 3x leaps, we were dealing with a constant stream of problems and non systemic situations every day. I'm grateful to my top management team because they help me free up my time so I can do things like this, talk to you, and focus on more strategic global tasks. To be honest, I'm not very involved in daily operations anymore. My job now is to be like an icebreaker, to break through mental barriers around innovation, to push change in the agri sector every single day, non-stop. I write my own posts on Facebook so farmers read them and see real actions. What I'm telling you today is not some dream. It's not tomorrow we will go to Mars on a Falcon 9 with Elon Musk. No, I'm talking about things we've already done, what's working right now. And when it comes to business structure, systematization, you have to learn it. And one of my key rules is this: let the problem happen, let the discomfort come, because only then will you realize that something needs to be fixed and that change is necessary. If you've created a process, let's say a simple one like submitting a request, managing procurement, or reformatting something, and you keep changing it without ever reaching a final result, then you'll never grow. Because in any business process, people are the ones doing the work. And second, and most importantly, people are also the ones responsible for meeting your expectation of that result. If a process doesn't work, the issue is not the person. The issue is that the process you created, or the system or structure, is either not functional or you didn't train your people properly.
That's true.
And now you'll say, well, that's logical. And that brings us back to what I said earlier. Don't make simple things complicated. Our job is to make complex things simple. Here is what I always say. If you want transparency, if you want people to do high quality work, they need to be able to understand and fulfill your expectations. Expectations that exist in your mind based on your vision. Managing a team of 5 people versus 15, 20 people, honestly, not much changes. But once you are managing 50 to 80 people, that's where the game shifts. And I often have to stop myself from jumping in and trying to do everything with my own hands in some department or function. It doesn't matter what people call you. At that level, it's about a completely different kind of responsibility and a completely different kind of
Definitely.
management. And most importantly, for anyone in a leadership position, don't be focused on what's going wrong. Be focused on what's going right. And always make sure to tell your people what they are doing well. And the key is to let your team see that you are truly satisfied with the results of their work. Because what happened to me, and can happen to anyone, is that sometimes we only focus on correcting inefficiencies or pointing out what's not working. There is a saying, what you send out is what comes back to you. If all you put out is negativity, that's exactly what you'll receive in return. But if you want to transform your company, that's when real responsibility begins. When you are working with people, they come to work because they want to be connected to something meaningful. The world no longer operates in the paradigm of just work for money. Money is a reachable goal, sure, but it's not enough anymore.
Yes, that's really important.
When it comes to innovation, there is one amazing book I always recommend. I've even posted about it on my social media. I really love it. Anyone working in innovation should read it.
Now we are curious, tell us more.
It's a global bestseller called Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, Turning Your Business into an Enduring Great Company by Jim Collins and Bill
Oh,
Lazier.
nice. We love when our guests share books recommendations. We are building out our own reading list for the future.
Yes, and for everyone watching today who is involved in startups, there is another must read, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. That book is amazing. I actually have a copy I could go grab in and show you. It's a super practical guide on how to build startups, how to think about models, and how to move forward. And as a foundation for every startup, there is a very simple tool called the Business Lean Model Canvas. A one-page business model. It's something we learned in our acceleration program. If you can't fill out a simple A4 sheet divided into 7 columns explaining what your product is, who it's for, what exactly you are selling, and how you are monetizing it,
Exactly.
then honestly your startup has no future. And many people don't even use this tool. I strongly recommend studying the Business Lean Model Canvas. It's the foundation for everything you are building and doing. I say not only as an entrepreneur, but also as an expert at the Ukrainian Startup Fund, because I've seen firsthand most startups don't use this framework, and then when experts ask them
Yes,
questions, they
exactly. So,
simply can't
startups, if you
answer.
haven't come across this topic yet, take Bohdan's advice seriously. It's really valuable. And thank you for sharing such great tips. and even some book recommendation. That's important too. I also think it's really useful that you talked about your method, that sometimes it's better to make a mistakes early on so that you grow, improve, and don't repeat it. It's the same thing with startups that spend too long perfecting their first version of the product. They get stuck in the MVP stage, they overthink the tech space, and keep making tweaks here and there. Eventually, the launch gets delayed and the product ends up being completely different from what it was supposed to be.
Alexandra, can I highlight something you just said? You mentioned the phrase, I don't like it. And I always ask this in return. Are you building a startup for yourself or for the customer?
Yes, really, but I think at first a lot of people make product decisions based on personal experience or their own feelings.
That's true, but we need to understand this. Right now, I'm reading a really good book about ego. Of course, when you start building your startup, you are passionate, you are full of energy, you want to change the world, but at that moment, you also have to manage your ego so that you don't overcomplicate what should be kept simple.
That's true.
When it comes to simplicity and clarity, just open the Monobank app and you'll see how people took something complex and made it simple. That's what we are talking about, customer-centric design. Now imagine if Horokhovsky had sat there and said, I'll build a bank that I personally like using. But
Of
that's not
course.
his role. He is a top manager of a huge company. His job is completely different. His responsibility is to track flows, manage business processes, and make sure everything functions on a systemic level. But I, as an ordinary puzzle tested user, I just want to solve a problem in 3 clicks. No barriers. I don't want someone to have to call me. I don't want to type in the last 4 digits of my number again. I don't want face recognition and 3 step verifications just to do a basic task. So don't build products for yourself. Unless, by the way, you are a billionaire, then sure, build something just for you. Something custom made like a Rolex or a Bugatti. But if you want to create a product that other people will actually use, then you need to start thinking about people.
Yes, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, there is your first users, your first consumers, and it really matters to them. That's why people always say if you plant an MVP, release it as planned. Only then, after users start using it, will you truly understand what needs to be added, what needs to be changed, because the best feedback is one that comes after release. Once people actually starting using your product, they will let you know that doesn't work, what's confusing, what's great, and what need to improve. It's all about iteration. You just need to launch, and then once you're live, you will understand what needs to be adjusted. That makes organizing the work process so much easier.
Look, I live by a simple principle. You can't improve something you haven't finished building. You need to let the process run its course, make as many mistakes and screw ups as possible, and only then start improving something solid, something structural. If you try to improve while still creating, you are just stuck in process mode. Life is all about survival, but survival should be high quality and always better than before. But better compared to what? Yesterday you had a wooden door. Today you realize there are better technologies. So what do? You replace the door. Add a smart lock, better hardware. You don't keep carving the old wooden door and start trying to glue a smart lock onto it. There has to be a solid foundation. And that's exactly what MVPs are for. You need to treat it as an MVP. We don't need big products, we need valuable ones. And the key word in MVP is value. The minimum value your product already delivers to the
Yes,
customer.
I agree. We actually have a question from a startup. It's related to your educational and outreach work. Tвердослав is asking, would it be possible to organize a meeting with you? There is a group of farmers interested in creating their own agro cluster. Maybe you could help them guide.
I could never say no to someone like Tverdoslav. I always say yes to people like that. I'm absolutely open to sharing, connecting, and introducing them to whoever I can. Look, this kind of request is about improvement. When someone wants to change something, people like us have no right to say no. So, yes, please. Reach out to me on social media or ask Alexandra to share my contacts. I'm always up for this. We'll make time.
Awesome. Someone already thanked you in the chat, so it's great that you're genuinely open to this kind of initiatives. That really matters. Because when people are genuinely striving towards something but lack of experience or knowledge, it's so valuable to have people like you who can share the real insights.
Let me explain why I'm like this. Back when I was growing, developing, and forming myself as a person, I did not have mentors. I didn't have access to people or opportunities like the ones that exist now. Back then, we were like blind kittens, bumping into everything, making all the mistakes, and getting almost nothing in return. I only changed my mindset after attending the school for young leaders, where Irina Zolotarevich gave me a chance. Out of 120 participants, I was selected as one of the top 10 who received personal coaching. That's where my personal growth really began, with vision, mentorship, and coaching. Now, when you've grown into a competent professional, something in your mindset always pulls you back and tells you it's time to give back. That's a huge part of who I am. Helping others, it's meaningful. That's why we are doing this interview with you. It's for the people who joined this session, and our goal is to be valuable to them, to help them grow, and ultimately make our country better. Because only young, proactive people like them can truly transform it.
Absolutely agree with you. At this point, we will move on to the final part of our interview, a repeat fire questions round. It will be a mix of work and daily life topics. I will ask short questions and you can give short answers.
Okay,
And here is the first question. Is there a thought leader that inspires you?
definitely. If we are talking about who I watch and listen to regularly on YouTube, I really like Mr. Nikonov from Khan Development, a major construction developer. Also, Vasily Khmelnytsky, who is building Unit City, he's impressive. From the government side, I admire Minister Fedorov from the Ministry of Digital Transformation. He is someone who has genuinely made life more convenient in how we interact with the state. As someone who understands how the legal system works, I know it was not easy for him. Globally, I've read a lot about Steve Jobs. His story is fascinating. And recently, I watched a mini series about David Beckham. He is someone who, at one point, became the most hated person among his fans, even though they used to idolize him. That's the paradox of people. We put people on pedestal and then sometimes try to tear them down.
Yes, that happens too.
Якщо взяти там з того, що подивитися
If
більш
we are going a
глибше,
bit
так,
deeper into
філософії
philosophy or
якоїсь такої глибокої,
spirituality, I
це
also
Садхгуру,
follow Sadhguru and
Далай-лама.
the
Мені
Dalai
було
Lama.
трошки
I'm
цим
quite
так
interested in
цікавився.
that. On YouTube, I
На
also
Ютубі
watch
також
the
дивлюся
channel
канал
Minora, which
Мінора.
offers a fascinating
Доволі
perspective
такий
on
цікавий
Jewish life
підхід
and values,
бачення життя євреїв.
especially
Вони
considering the
теж
tough historical
історично
path
пережили
they've
нелегкий
walked.
момент. Там
There
пан
are
Боголюбов
interviews there, for
займався
example, with
підводною
Mr.
єпархією, там деякі
Bohlyubov,
інтерв'ю.
one of Ukraine's
Але
well-known
якщо брати
businessmen.
нових,
And speaking of more modern
це
figures,
Артем
I really
Бородатюк,
admire
Netflix.
Artem Borodatyuk, the founder of NetPeak.
Ну, прям, от, я б хотів таку компанію
Honestly,
і
I'd love to build
методично
something similar but in the
побудувати
agriculture
саме
sector.
в агросекторі. Потім,
And let
що
me
ще в нас
think,
таке?
who else?
Я
I
забув,
forgot
як
the name of the owner of
Аякса,
Ajax. People like that,
власника. Це прям
really on
дуже
another level.
Великі,
е,
великі.
Yes,
великі.
really
Нова
big
пошта.
ones. Also, someone I deeply
Останнє
admire,
колишнє,
Volodymyr Poperechny,
їм
co-founder
панує.
of Nova Poshta.
Це
His
на
work
яких я
really
підписаний,
resonates with
який
me.
читаю.
I follow
І
people
всі
like that.
потужні люди
They are
мене
all over my
встрічні
news
в
feed on
Фейсбуці і
Facebook
всіх
and
остальних
other
соціальних
social media
мережах, тому
platforms.
що моє
Because, in
бачення,
my
що
view, your
оточення формує
environment
людей.
shapes who you are.
Absolutely. Networking is a key. And
Це
even
важливо,
just
і
learning
навіть
about how people
знайомство
build
з
their
життям, як
businesses,
люди
it's
формували,
super
будували
valuable.
свій бізнес,
You
це теж
don't
класно, тому що
necessarily
на
copy their
досвіді
strategy, of course, because
людей можна
what
побудувати
worked
якесь теж
for
своє
them might
бачення.
not work
Звісно,
for
воно
you.
не буде
But
ідентичним, воно не буде
the
таким
more
самим.
real life
Всі ці
stories you
критерії,
know,
які
the
базують
easier
когось
it
на
is
так,
to
бути так
shape your
треба,
own vision,
але
grow
чим
and
більше
learn.
ти знаєш
Let's
таких,
move on to the
ну,
next
як можна сказати,
question.
близьких до
It's a
тебе
bit more fun and
прикладів, тим
imaginative.
простіше тобі теж будувати щось
If you
своє,
could
вчитися,
pick
рости,
any
і це
super
класно.
powerful work,
Пропоную
what would it
переходити
be?
до наступного питання.
Controlling
Воно
time or
стосується
reading minds or
такої,
something
ну,
else?
трошки фантастичної складової, але окей, воно буде звучати так. Якби у вас була можливість обрати суперздібність для роботи, то що б ви обрали? Керувати часом чи читати думки? Чи, можливо, щось своє?
Думки,
Reading
якби ми могли
minds?
читати, я вам
Well, if
скажу,
we could
це
read everyone's thoughts,
життя без
life would
бар'єрів, воно
actually be
не
boring.
цікаве. Да?
No
Там є
challenges, no
технологія,
mystery.
що є
See,
бар'єри,
there's
є
this
свободи, є
idea that we
цілі.
need
Да? І щоб
barriers
досягнути
because
цілі,
they give
повинні
rise
бути
to
бар'єри,
freedoms, and
які дають
freedoms
далі
help you
більше вам
pursue goals,
свобод,
meaningful
ну, в
ones.
тому числі
Without those
матеріальних, там,
obstacles, life
самореалізації, все.
becomes
І
too
ви так
easy, and when
досягаєте
life
мети.
is too
Якщо
easy,
прибрати бар'єри,
sometimes people
то
lose
будуть свободи і
direction.
цілі.
A
Да? А
totally free
свободне
society,
суспільство,
if
воно
left
здатне до
unchecked, can
самознищення.
collapse on itself.
Yes, you're
Дуже.
right.
Да?
Exactly.
Ну, то есть,
If there are
ми,
no
ми
goals,
потім не
there is
будемо
nothing to
цілі. То є
strive for.
бар'єри в житті, які
And
ми повинні
yes,
долати,
some people
а
face
когось
brutal
бар'єри, на
barriers,
жаль, там
even life-threatening ones,
вбивають. Да?
unfortunately.
Це все. Тому в своєму
But for me
житті, напевне, я б
personally,
хотів,
if I could
щоб
choose a
в
real
мене
super ability,
було достатньо часу, щоб розуміти людей,
it would be having
виходячи з
enough
уміння,
time
навичків і
and
знань,
mental
які
clarity
дало
to
нам
truly
людство.
understand people.
І щоб час, який ми знаходимося тут на землі, щохвилини проживати не даремно.
To recognize where their
Розуміти там, де
intentions are
люди
coming from,
діють
whether they are good or not, and whether they're
з
acting
намірами
from lack of
хорошими,
knowledge or just bad
а там, де
motives.
люди діють з намірами нехорошими.
I love that.
Це теж
That
свого
is
роду
a
така
kind of
суперздібність.
superpower in
Так,
itself.
ось і все.
Yes,
Тому що ти
exactly.
інколи
Because
дивишся, що
sometimes someone does
якась,
something
ну
that
там,
looks like a
фігня
mistake or
випустили, да? Але в
nonsense,
людини
but
наміри
their
хороші,
intentions
і
were good,
за відсутності
and
в
you
мене
only
знань і
realize that
розуміння
later
цього,
when you
я
understand their background
не
or where
бачу,
they are
як це
coming from.
потім далі буде.
So
Точно,
true, I
точно
completely
згодна з
agree.
вами.
Let's keep
Продовжуємо
going.
тоді. І
Here is the
наступне
next
питання
quick
у нас
question.
таке. Яка
What's the
цінність
number
номер один
one
для
core
вашої
value
команди?
in your team?
Номер
Number
один
one,
це повага і
definitely
честь.
respect and honesty.
That's
Класно,
great.
так, це
It's
дуже
really
важливо.
В нас,
essential.
до речі,
In
даже
fact,
є
we have
кодекс
a code
чесності
of honor
в
in our company.
компанії. Ну,
It's
в мене
something
він
I personally
сформований,
helped
да, щоб
shape.
це було
No matter
як є.
what, that's the baseline
Тому номер
respect
один
and
це повага
honesty.
і чесність. До
And
речі,
actually,
Круто.
за
violating those values
порушення
is a
цього в
fireable offense
компанії
at our company.
звільнюють.
Мгм. Ну,
No,
я би
but
сказала, що
honestly,
це
I
такі
agree.
важливі цінності,
Those
які, в
are
принципі,
such
да, якщо
fundamental
їх
values
порушувати,
that
то
if
це
someone
є
breaks
мого
them, it's
позитиву
valid
для того,
reason
щоб
to not
більшості
continue
людини не
working
працювати.
with them.
Тут я цілком згодна.
Ми через
Exactly.
свою
We've
технологію
developed a clear
використовували.
system around
Більшість
it.
компаній Вінниці
Most
знають, якщо
companies in
в
Vinnytsia
компанії
already
FRENDT
know
пішла
if
людина
someone
за
leaves friends by
власним
their own
бажанням,
choice
то
and
якесь
the
розставання
departure
з
wasn't
молодшими
handled
дуже
ethically, it says a
етичним,
lot.
да, можна так
But
сказати.
if they
Якщо
leave by
людина
mutual
пішла за
agreement,
угодою сторін,
that person
значить
always has the
цій
door
людині
open to
точно
come
відкриті
back.
двері на повернення в компанію.
That's such a
Класно.
clear and smart
Ну, це теж
approach.
важливо. Це
Ми
така
просто, щоб не
Yeah, we set
плутатися,
this up so there is
визначили
no
для себе в
confusion.
компанії. І, до речі, це по
It's
прикладу
part of
системи, да,
building
побудови
systems,
систем.
really.
Да.
A
От тверде
simple,
правило,
solid
яке ми
rule that
прийняли, воно
everyone
є.
understands.
І причому
And what's
це
great, it helps
правило
our HR
знають
team
не
a
тільки
lot
співробітники,
when
воно дуже
someone wants to
допомагає
return.
нашому HR-директору визначатись, коли повторно люди хочуть повернутись. А
Even
Так.
among
до
our
речі,
industry
ще на
peers,
ринку праці
our
серед
competitors,
наших колег,
our partners,
ми бачимо всіх наших конкурентів,
people
партнерів,
already
вони
know the
розуміють, що
system.
ну, мені не треба відповідати на
They
дзвінки,
don't even have to call and
коли
ask
ну там
for
і
a
дайте
reference
рекомендацію, і
anymore.
все. Вони
If they know
розуміють, що
how
якщо
someone
отак, то
left,
так, а
they
якщо отак,
already know
то
what that
немає
means.
сенсу телефонувати, тут рішення зрозуміло.
Все
Got it.
зрозуміло.
That makes
Так, теж
total
правильна
sense.
система, я
All
думаю.
right, next question.
Наступне питання наше
What
таке.
piece of advice would
Яку
you give to
пораду ви б дали
yourself
собі на
at the
початку
beginning
життя?
of your career?
Not to be afraid.
So
Класно.
true, that's
Це
really
важливо
important.
теж.
Sometimes
Я
fear
думаю, що
holds
іноді
us
це
back
нам
from unloading
не дозволяє
of
повністю розкрити свій
our full
потенціал. Якийсь
potential.
страх
We are
того, що
afraid
щось не
something
вийде, щось
might
піде не
go
так, і
wrong or
завжди
what
якось
we
всередині
fail,
це
and
переживаємо.
those inner
Or
doubts
even
stop us
worse,
from
we are
moving
afraid
forward.
of what others might think.
Ну
Відверто
так,
всім
так.
But
кажу, всім
honestly,
похер.
no one cares.
Точно.
Да.
And yet we
А ми
worry
про це
so much
переймаємось.
about it.
Краще, ну там,
It's better
робити
to just start
потихеньку,
slowly,
швиденько,
quickly,
помаленьку,
however you
як у вас
can, just
виходить,
do it.
але робити. І кількість спроб
And if you don't have
тільки саме
quality yet,
кількість спроб. Якщо у вас
quantity
спроби
will
не
help you.
якісні, вас просто
Keep
виручить
trying
кількість.
because eventually
Спроб, вона
quantity
досягне
leads to
точно до
results.
результату. І вас, як
Even if you mess
результат,
something up,
розуміння
that's
того,
still
що
a
ти щось
result.
зробив неправильно, це теж результат. І це
Так,
теж,
так.
і це теж
Це
користь.
досвід.
Yes, that's
Exactly.
an
And it's
experience.
valuable.
Часто, як
But the
люди,
problem
що
is,
хоч
as
ми Homo
humans, even
sapiens,
though we are supposed to
ми
be a Homo
вчиняємо
sapiens,
неправильно, коли
we tend to
обесцінюємо той
dismiss the
досвід,
value of those
який в нас
experiences
привіз не до
that did not give
бажаного
us the
результату.
result we wanted.
Так,
Це,
є таке.
це дуже
But that's
потрібно. Є
often the
люди, які
most
дуже
valuable
великі гроші платять
experience.
за ті
There are
результати,
people who
які
are
не
willing to pay
вдались,
serious
щоб
money
перейняти
just to
досвід.
learn
Але
from
це в тих
failed
людей
outcomes
є
because
здібність
they know
переймати
how
негативний
powerful
досвід.
that
Вони в
kind
цьому
of
бачать
learning is. The
позитив
key is
насправді.
being able to see the positive
Мгм, мгм,
inside the
мгм.
negative.
І
The most
найбільше,
important
що
thing a
повинна
person
прагнути
can
людина,
strive
це
for is to discover
здобувати
their own
свою
truth,
власну
a truth
істину,
that's not forced on them,
виходячи з усього,
not made
що є
up, not
навколо, свою
fantasized,
власну
but
виводити
something they've
істину і
drawn from
отримувати
the
знання,
world
щоб
around
це не
them,
було не
something
нав'язано,
they've
не
earned.
придумано, не
And
нафантазовано.
life, it's
А
all
що
about
людина
pluses and
ось так.
minuses.
А
Same with
життя це
startups. They're
плюси і
about
мінуси.
wins and
І стартап
losses.
це й
Точно.
плюси і мінуси.
Exactly. One
Точно,
idea
точно.
might
Одна
succeed,
ідея
another
там
might
досягне
fall,
успіху,
but
інша
that's
не
how it
вдасться, але
works.
так
It's a
має бути.
kind of
Тобто
natural
це такий
selection.
відбір,
Something
щось
clicks, something
класно
don't.
виходить, щось не дуже.
You
Завжди
always
потрібно
have to remember
згадувати
Thomas
Томаса
Edison.
Едісона. Да?
That light bulb
Оця
we all
лампочка,
use
яка
today.
горить,
He had to
вона
go through
скільки
almost
випробувань людина
50,000
зробила? Біля
experiments to
50
get it
000.
right.
Та,
Але
але все
But
ж
воно
in
таки
the
воно
end, he
вийшло.
made it.
Exactly,
воно
he
вийшло.
made it.
Тому
So you
варто
have to
слідко
believe in
бити і
what you are
вірити в те,
doing
що ти робиш,
and
і
in what
що
you
ти
truly want
хочеш
to bring to
реалізувати.
life.
Головне, щоб
As
це
long
було
as that desire
істинне
is
твоє
real,
бажання.
truly yours,
А далі все,
everything
все
else will
підтягнеться.
eventually fall into place.
Це
All right,
точно.
here's another
Тоді в
one
нас таке
similar
схоже
spirit.
питаннячко.
What's
Яку звичку
one
ви б
habit you
рекомендували розвивати
recommend
кожному
every
підприємцю?
entrepreneur to develop?
Reading
Читати книги.
books.
Так,
Yes,
так,
reading
важливо.
is so
Читати,
much
я
important.
думаю,
It's kind of
це така
core
основа, але
foundation.
хоча деякі
So
люди
some
все ж
people
таки говорять,
say
що
that struggle
це
with it,
складно,
that
не
it doesn't
вдається.
come
Але я
naturally.
вважаю, що є дуже
But I
багато
really think there
способів,
are so many
якими
ways
можна
to make
це
it easier,
змінити. Тобто
like
шукати для
reading
себе
short
варіанти в
stories,
спосіб.
listening to
Читати
audiobooks, or even
короткі
watching movies
історії
based on
або
the books.
слухати
It still counts.
аудіокнижки,
You
або
just
дивитися
have to
там
find your
фільми
format.
по книжкам. Теж прикольно.
Ну,
Тому що треба
ви
шукати
знаєте,
спосіб це робити.
от ви
You know
знаєте,
why
чому люди
people don't
не
finish reading
дочитують
books?
книжки?
Щось їм не вистачає впевненості або бажання, можливо.
Зазвичай,
Usually,
зазвичай,
yes. I've looked
я
into this
трошки
a
це
bit.
питання
One of the
дослідив.
main
Питання в
reasons
тому,
people don't
чому ми не
finish books
дочитуємо
is
книжки,
because
тому що
they
там
come
є ті
across
слова,
words
які
or
ви не
ideas they
зрозуміли.
don't understand.
Угу.
І вас
And
Так, є
that
в цьому
causes
якась
them to lose
просто
interest. If
інтерес,
too much
тому
of the
що
book
вам
isn't
багато чого
clear,
не
your
зрозуміло, і
brain just
потім ви це
checks out.
викладаєте.
But
Якщо книжка
when
для
the book
вас
speaks to
зрозуміла, і
you,
ви
when
можете
it's
її
relatable and
застосувати,
practical, you keep
ви її
reading.
будете читати. Просто
Just think
згадайте, коли ви
about the last
читали
time you read
з
something with
натхненням,
excitement,
а коли без
and now
натхнення.
think
Що з
about
вами
when it
було і
felt
чому
like a
до
chore.
чого це призвело?
Ну що
Well,
ж, на цьому
I
ми так
think that's a perfect
пропонуємо
note to end on.
закінчувати.
We
Ми
really
були
enjoyed
дуже раді
talking to
сьогодні
you
з вами
today. It's
поспілкуватися.
been amazing to hear
Класно, що ви
your
змогли поділитися своїм
share
власним
about
досвідом,
your personal journey,
ідеями
your
і
ideas, and
навіть
your
планами на
future vision.
майбутнє.
It's
Це
inspiring
круто,
to see
що
people
в нашій
like you in
державі
our
є такі
country,
люди,
people who are
які
ready to
готові
take
ділитися цілими
responsibility,
трансформувати
drive innovation, and push
різні
transformation
процеси, які
forward.
брати на
Thank you
себе таку
again, Bohdan,
відповідальність і
for
важливість.
joining
І це
us.
дуже класно. Тому ще раз дякую, Богдане, що сьогодні доєднались до нас.
Дуже вам
Huge
дякую, що ви
thanks
нас
to you
запросили.
for having me.
And
А
to
наші
our startup community, don't forget to like, watch, and comment on our videos, share them with friends, and check out our past episodes of UME UP Startup Experience. We'd love to see your reactions and your feedback so we can making our content even better. We hope to see you again in the new season of our program. Thanks to everyone who joined us and shared their questions, and wishing you all a great day. See you next time.